After finishing up development of Infamous in 2009, Sucker Punch immediately got to work on a sequel. The first Infamous game was a smash hit when it released, selling at least 1.2 million copies by December of 2009. Infamous had made itself a household name with fans, and even with PlayStation, as Cole would go on to be featured in marketing material for the PlayStation brand, and he'd even make appearances in other games like Uncharted 2's multiplayer, and believe it or not, Street Fighter Cross Tekken. That's if you're playing the PlayStation 3 version. Sucker Punch had proven that even after the Sly era, they could still make quality games. With the ending of Infamous 1 teasing a sequel, the dev team knew that this follow-up had to be good. There was a lot riding on this, and one wrong move could sink the whole ship. With this in mind, lots of changes had to be made. In a May 2011 interview with NZ Gamer, one of the developers, Joe Ishikura, comments on the changes made with Infamous 2, stating, quote, "When we started making Infamous 2, we didn't keep anything holy. We decided that everything was on the table and seeing what we can make or improve on from before. I think you see that in a lot of the details we've shown off so far that we don't want to make Infamous 1.5. We want to make Infamous 2, which means everything has got to improve." End quote. Taking into account Joe Ishikura's words regarding a sequel, Infamous 2 was an all-or-nothing mission from the start. One of the most notable changes was Cole's controversial redesign. Cole's new design was revealed on the cover of the July 2010 issue of Game Informer magazine. Fans did not like this. I don't either. I don't know what it is, but Cole looks like he's supposed to be in an Uncharted game with this design. Because of the negative reception surrounding Cole's initial redesign, the artist went back to the drawing board and gave Cole a design that was a little bit closer to how he looked in the first game, yet still different enough to stand out on its own. Cole still has his buzz cut, and this time, he's wearing a short sleeve shirt and jogging pants. Given that Infamous 2 takes place in the South, giving him an outfit that suits the weather was a good call. Cole's voice actor got changed as well. His previous actor was Jason Cottle, and his new VA, Eric Layden, not only does his voice work, but also the motion capture. There were other big changes made to Infamous 2 as well. I won't go over all of them, just the ones that stand out to me the most. For starters, one of the biggest changes made was the cutscenes. In the first game, cutscenes done in the game's engine were kind of awkward. Characters would stand and move around stiffly, and they had the mannerisms of two people from The Sims having a conversation. This time, however, the cutscenes have more life to them. They look and feel more dynamic, more natural. The motion capture really did this game justice. Because of the improved cutscenes, the comic book cinematics were only reserved for bigger moments in the game's plot. Speaking of which, the comic scenes also got changed up a little. The first game's comic cinematics were drawn with a tone that conveyed feelings of hopelessness and cynicism, with liberal use of ink splashes and the colors bleeding onto other objects. In Infamous 2, the comics are drawn more cleanly to reflect Cole's newfound resolve and new beginnings for him and everyone else. There's less ink splashed around, and the colors are brighter than before. The biggest change, however, was the setting. Cole's new mission takes him from the bustling mid-Atlantic metropolis of Empire City to the lush southern city of New Marais, Louisiana. New Marais is based off of New Orleans, and I gotta say that the designers at Sucker Punch did a great job at crafting their own rendition of the birthplace of jazz. Empire City, while more dense than New Marais, didn't have many areas that stuck out to me, with Archer Square and Ground Zero being the only exceptions. New Marais, on the other hand, has a lot of memorable locations. It's got St. Ignatius, the cathedral overlooking the city, Vieille Cochon, which is basically the downtown area, and it also houses the French Quarter. Then there's Flood Town, a part of the city that had been long abandoned after being devastated by Hurricane Katrina, and finally, the Gasworks, which is an island that's one big industrial park, home to many factories and warehouses. Another big change is the game's soundtrack. Infamous 1's music had a rough, experimental sound to it, something akin to the hustle and bustle of New York City. For Infamous 2, the music still carried that sound, but this time it has a more southern vibe, with a jazzier tone, more emphasis on rhythm, and a dynamic presence in the game's open world. The composers chosen for Infamous 2 consisted of James Dooley, a returning composer from the first game, Brian Mantia, former drummer of Guns N' Roses, Melissa Reese, who, believe it or not, is part of the current lineup of Guns N' Roses as the second keyboardist. Another member of this composition team is Jonathan Meyer, who's a drummer and music manager over at Sony Computer Entertainment America. And last but not least is New Orleans funk band Galactic. It'd be a huge disservice to not have help from some local talent on this game's music. This team of musicians and composers all gave Infamous 2 its diverse sound, and I can't help but give them props for their work. That about does it for looking at what happened behind the scenes. It's time to dive deep into the story of Infamous 2. Infamous 2 opens up with Cole telling us about his life before the blast, and he gives us a recap of the events from the first game. A new threat known only as the Beast is coming, and Cole needs to prepare. A month after the events of the first game, a woman named Lucy Quo flies into Empire City and says that she has data on the Beast, and a friend of hers, Dr. Wolf, worked on a ray sphere prototype, and his research can improve Cole's powers. The first cutscene begins with Cole staring out at Empire City from the boat he's on with Zeke. Yep, Zeke makes a return, but this time he's really likable, which kinda sucks because I hated how he acted in Infamous 1. Cole must have the patience of a saint because I don't know how he found it in himself to forgive Zeke, especially when he almost detonated the ray sphere again and nearly killed thousands of more people, and on top of that, he even joined forces with Kessler. All is forgiven, I guess. On the boat is Lucy Quo, an NSA agent who used her connections to arrange this boat ride. While the three of them are talking about their plans for when they arrive in New Marais, their conversation gets cut short by an explosion in the Neon District, which turns out to be a vortex that's sucking up anything and anyone that happens to be in the area. Cole realizes that that vortex is the Beast, and it arrived sooner than expected. He jumps off the boat and rushes headfirst into the action. After getting its attention, the Beast tosses a large chunk of the Archer Square statue at Cole, which knocks him down for a little bit. Once Cole is back on his feet, the Beast appears in front of him and the two battle it out. The Beast uses a power of his to lower gravity in the immediate area, and Cole is forced to fight him in mid-air. He's able to blow a chunk of his head off and gravity goes back to normal. Then, Cole hits the Beast with his lightning storm power with everything he's got, which incapacitates him. Cole makes a run for it and jumps towards the boat, but he gets stopped by that anti-gravity power again. If the Beast is going down, he's not going without a fight. It grabs Cole by the waist with its huge hands and only his arms are free. Cole makes one final stand against the Beast by blasting it with lightning bolts and ending the assault with one last lightning storm to the head. The Beast finally lets go of Cole and he falls headfirst onto the pier, drained of power. When Cole wakes up on the boat, he finds out that the Beast had just healed itself back up. Even worse though, the Beast had completely destroyed Empire City. On the boat, Cole starts having doubts about his abilities, and he even blames himself for Empire City's destruction. Then he gets a grip and remembers what he's fighting for. The next day, he helped out Zeke with creating a device for his powers. Yeah, that thing's gonna come back in a little bit. Quo's intel on the Beast says that it's been destroying cities on the northern end of the East Coast for a while, and it's making its way down south soon. Since New Marais is in lockdown, Quo requested a smaller boat so that they could sneak in through the swamp. And then, Cole ends this cinematic with one of the best quotes I've heard in a video game.
I don't know if you've ever let someone down, got your ass kicked, or straight up failed. But those are the moments that define us. They push you further than you've ever thought possible and force you to make choices. No matter what the cost.
During the boat ride, Zeke is forced to cut the engines because the militia have a blockade that'll sink any boat in sight. Before Cole takes off, Zeke hands him the amp, and that's gonna be our melee weapon for this game. Now, in my last Infamous video, I didn't bother talking about the melee combat because I couldn't find a good spot for it, but what I will say is that melee in the first game is cumbersome and awkward. Enemies take a lot of hits before going down, and you're better off zapping them with lightning than trying to beat them up. In Infamous 2, however, the melee combat looks and feels so smooth and refined, and that's all thanks to the amp. Later on in the game, you can upgrade the amp to have these powerful and stylish finishing moves. We arrive at a bridge that crosses a river, and we're presented with our first karma moment in the game. You can either charge the bridge normally and deal with whatever enemies you come across, or overload the generator, which will cause an explosion that takes out both the militia and the civilians in that village. Karma moments in Infamous 2 finally feel like your choices and consequences have more weight, and they have a bigger impact on everyone and everything around you, even going so far as to affect certain locales. This is something that Infamous 1 absolutely needed, because beforehand, karma moments were more shallow and really just there to push your meter forwards or backwards. The bridge gets powered on, and Cole swoops in and takes out any resistance that gets in his way. Another aspect of karma is introduced, and these are called karma opportunities. These are small-scale karma moments that are completely optional, but doing them will shift the meter a bit depending on what side you're on. The village is saved, and Cole takes out the mortars, but just for good measure, he goes and clears out a militia settlement up ahead. Once everything is clear, Quo docks the boat, and we finally arrive arrive in New Marais, Louisiana. We then get a cutscene of Cole reminiscing about his time in New Marais. He first came there 4 years ago while learning how to do parkour. The part of town him and Zeke practiced in was flooded, and no cops would bother them. Not that they would have in the first place, given how corrupt they were before the militia took over. New Marais was one big party. That all came to an end once the militia came to town. These guys were just a bunch of armed thugs walking up and down the street looking for deviants to arrest. For Cole, they're just another Tuesday afternoon for him. If they're what stands between him, his powers, and even the Beast, then so be it. Quo and Zeke arrive at the docks, and it's here we get to see how karma moments have a greater impact this time around.
Why didn't you blow up those oil tanks in that camp? Would have made getting through a lot easier.
Hey, I'm about to start torturing families just to make my life a little easier.
Good. That's what I wanted to hear. You made the right choice. I'm impressed. You acted like a professional.
Once on the streets, Quo contacts Dr. Wolf, and he says that the militia raided his lab this morning, and they stole a device called a blast core. I'll go over what that is in a moment. The militia ambushes the two, and we finally get our first taste of urban combat in the game. The mobility has been improved, and you can hang off of stuff like verandas, streetcars, and guard towers, which gives you more ways to tackle enemies. The two split up, and Cole finds the blast core on a rooftop. When he calls Wolf and Quo to tell them that he got the blast core, an explosion erupts from another rooftop in the distance. Cole rushes to where the explosion came from, and he rescues Wolf. Wolf says that Cole looks just like Kessler, but Cole does not want to hear any more about him. Back when the two were lab partners, Kessler told Wolf about all of his plans for Cole and the Beast. Wolf hands over this device called the RFI, or the Ray Field Inhibitor. In his own words, it's an anti-ray sphere. If Cole powers this thing in front of the Beast, its powers will be weakened, giving Cole the edge he needs to take him on. Cole shows Wolf the blast core, and he explains that they power the RFI, and if Cole passes a current through one of them, they'll amplify his abilities. Cole wastes no time, and he powers up the blast core, but when he does, power from the core knocks him out. Text on the screen reveals that we need to power up 6 more cores to be able to face the Beast. Cole wakes up to the sound of Zeke fending off some militia goons. He tells us that Wolf got captured and Quo is chasing after the ones who took him. Cole thinks that he might have a new power, so he jumps down to the streets to test it out. This is a new ability called Kinetic Pulse. What it does is allow Cole to lift up a vehicle or other large object and toss it at a great distance, exploding upon impact. This power was fun to use at first, but I don't see any practical reason to keep it around. Why go through the trouble of tossing something at an enemy when you could just use shock grenade or even a megawatt hammer? Both of those cause explosions nearly the size of what a vehicle does with Kinetic Pulse, except you don't have to go through the hassle of finding something to throw. Quo sends us to look for one of Wolf's carrier pigeons at the top of a clock tower. These messenger birds are what Quo and Wolf used to secretly communicate with each other when Wolf was in the First Sons. These birds are going to be this game's dead drops, and man are these things annoying to find, especially if you're shooting for the platinum like I did. In order to collect dead drops from these carrier pigeons, you have to climb the building the bird is flying around, get in position, and stun it with the shockwave power. Calm down, PETA. These birds don't die. After we knock out the bird, Zeke buzzes in and he offers the worst advice in the world for players on a good karma playthrough.
Hey man, you climbed all the way up there. Might as well come down with style.
Cole takes the thumb drive, and audio plays of Wolf advising Quo that the world needs to know about the damage the Ray Sphere did to Empire City, and that the evidence that she's building against the First Sons will be valuable. And in that same recording, Quo is told to share these messages with her contact in Empire City, that contact being John White, the guy from the last game who got sucked into the Ray Sphere like he was in Danny Phantom. It turns out that the NSA didn't have a clear idea on what conduits were, and they started doing tests on agents who had the conduit gene, and Quo and John carried it. Because of this, they were perfect choices for infiltrating the First Sons undercover. John was assigned to Empire City, and Quo was assigned to New Marais. When Quo was going over John's reports, she said that they started sounding strange after the Ray Sphere detonated, and at some points hard to believe until she arrived in Empire City to meet up with Cole. Zeke hits us up, and we get reacquainted with side missions. Basically, side missions are split between good, evil, and neutral, and they give you tons of XP for completing them. That's all there is to it, nothing more really. After some running around, the game introduces a new quick menu feature where the player can hold left on the D-pad and switch out specific abilities. Gotta say that this beats having to go in and out of the menu just to switch powers. And while we're on the topic, Cole's powers have evolved. Now Cole can choose a specific ability for certain powers. Let's take Cole's basic lightning attack for example. If the player accesses the quick menu or the power menu, they can select how they want the lightning to behave. So Cole's basic lightning bolt becomes pincer bolt, which is his standard attack, except now it fires lightning from 3 directions towards the enemy. Later, Quo brings Zeke and Cole onto a conference call, and she says that she lost the trail on Wolf and she's running out of time, and that once the militia have what they're looking for, Wolf is pretty much dead. Their only option left is to get information from Joseph Bertrand, leader of the militia and mayor, or in his case, dictator of New Marais. Quo says that he's going to be giving a big speech in front of the St. Ignatius Cathedral later that night, and that'll be their only chance to catch up to him. Cole waits for the speech to start on a nearby rooftop, and Zeke infiltrates the crowd as a supporter. Bertrand starts his speech off by dragging Cole's name through the mud and smearing his reputation. Also, I can't tell if they wanted this to be a covert op or not, because Cole walks through the crowd with the amp on his back, standing out like a sore thumb. Zeke considers leaving, but Cole says that the mission must go on or they'll lose Wolf. In the middle of Bertrand's speech, these gray humanoid creatures swoop in and crash the rally, and Eric Layden gives us one of the best line deliveries in this game.
The devil's coming through!
Cole swoops in and he knocks down both militia and monsters alike. These monsters are called the Corrupted, and they can be found in random parts of the city and more frequently in the swamps. Bertrand makes a run for his limo and Cole gives chase. After Cole lands on the limo's sunroof, he tries pressing Bertrand for answers, and it doesn't go too well.
You and I have a chat?
I got nothing to say to you.
Freak. Cut the crap. You're gonna take me to Wolf. Now.
Wait, if I were you, I'd be more worried about my head.
Cole miraculously doesn't have his head taken off, and he battles in the streets with a chopper pilot who flies way worse than I do in Battlefield 4. The chopper is shot down, and the night just gets crazier. Zeke says that he overheard some people talking about a strange device they found, and Cole goes to investigate. When he gets there, we're introduced to another karma opportunity called blast shard bombs. The name's pretty self-explanatory. If you drain power from these things, you'll be able to collect the shards used to make them. There's a similar karma opportunity where you can beat up a civilian that's holding a blast shard in their hand. Later that night, Quo says that Wolf's interrogator hit on her at a casino, and if Cole tails him from there, he might be able to lead them to where Wolf is being held captive. We get to the house Wolf is at, and Quo says that she needs us to clear off these roadblocks the militia set up, since getting the truck on and off that street is gonna be a hassle. After clearing out the first roadblock, the ground beneath Cole starts shaking, and whatever caused it moves under the streets real fast while destroying everything in its path. When Cole arrives at the second roadblock, there are corpses everywhere and the street is a mess. That force from earlier emerges from the ground and attacks Cole. This is another corrupted called the Ravager, and these things are annoying to fight. They can't be damaged by Cole's lightning except for when you're in a QuickTime event, and you can only hurt them through melee or explosives. But when you try to close in for a melee attack, they'll either dig underground or stand by and take maybe 1 or 2 hits. Also, if this thing rams into you, you're gonna take a lot of damage. Most annoyingly is that getting pinned to the ground by this thing means that you have to do a QTE where you mash R1 until he gets off of you. The worst part about this is that while you're mashing R1, the Ravager will be doing tons of damage over time, so you have to mash like you're playing Resident Evil 5. The Ravager is defeated, and Cole hops onto the back of a pickup truck where Quo and Wolf are waiting. Wolf says that he was tortured for answers, and before Quo can even ask what he revealed, they have to shake off a squad of militia that's closing in on them. Throughout the streets, we're met with heavy resistance, but Cole manages to keep the truck safe. When Cole asks about why Bertrand is gunning for Wolf like this, Wolf reveals that Bertrand gave him money to create a device for himself, and that the blast cords were only the start. Sadly, this conversation is cut short after an oncoming semi-truck smashes into Quo's vehicle. Quo makes it out alive, but the militia takes her captive. Wolf died immediately on impact. Cole manages to hide from the militia in a nearby storm drain, and he waits until it's safe to come out. Without Wolf, Cole needs to figure out how to take on the beast before it arrives. The following morning, Cole wakes up and leaves the storm drain and gets a call from Zeke. When asked about how the mission went last night, Cole explains that Wolf is dead and the militia have captured Quo. Cole is really not in the mood to speak right now. To be honest, it's kind of heartbreaking hearing Cole sound this defeated. His only lead for the Beast is dead and his friend's been kidnapped. The worst part is that the Beast is slowly closing in on New Marais, and Cole has to figure out how to take him on without Wolf's guidance. The TV stations from the last game make a return. This time, it's only just the news and Bertrand's propaganda commercials. If you're near a television playing one of these, there will be a box on the upper right corner of the screen that lets you get a better look at what's happening. And in case you're wondering, the TV jacker from the last game was actually murdered by the First Sons during a live broadcast. The news does reports on the destruction of Empire City and cities across the East Coast, saying that it's not known what's causing this. It's obvious that the government still has control over what the news is allowed to publish. It's a pretty sad case of dramatic irony when you think about it. Nobody except the player and the main cast knows what's behind the destruction, and anybody living on the East Coast won't know they're in danger until the Beast strikes. Also, according to this map, the Beast had gotten done destroying both of my hometowns at this point in the game, and I will never forgive him. The propaganda commercials, on the other hand, is just Bertrand giving updates to viewers on the situation in New Marais, and he's also calling conduits demons and whatnot. So yeah, they both suck. Cole meets up with Zeke on a rooftop, and the two discuss how hard it'll be to take on the Beast without the blast cores, since the RFI can't function without them. Zeke says that he might know where Quo is at because he heard that a woman fled into the swamps to escape a lynch mob. Cole heads there, and he searches around until he sees a gunfight out in the distance. He goes to see what all the fighting's about until he gets attacked by a woman named Nyx. Nyx says that she's a fan and she backs off. When Cole notices that she's holding on to a blast core, he asks if he can have it, but Nyx says that she'll only give it to him if he helps her out with attacking some militia outposts. God, man. Nyx is one of my favorite characters in this game because she's all about wreaking havoc on the bad guys just for the sake of wreaking havoc. Her powers are pretty badass too. Nyx's powers are the manipulation of napalm and fire. She also has this really awesome teleportation ability too. Anytime Nyx is with you, she can create these tendrils that grabs enemies from below and keeps them trapped for a short amount of time. You can fire lightning at these tendrils and create an explosion that acts as a chain reaction, killing anyone else caught in these things. After the raid, Nyx hands Cole the blast core and she asks if they'll be seeing each other again, and Cole obliges. Cole heads to Zeke's new hideout so he can set off the blast core and have Zeke watch over him while he sleeps. When he gets there, Zeke shows up wearing militia armor, and he says that he joined the militia so that he can spy on them and get info. After absorbing the blast core, Cole wakes up sometime later, and we now need to absorb the power of 5 more of these things. This new power we gain is called Ionic Vortex, and is part of a series of powers I like to call Ionic abilities. In order to use one of these, you need to collect what's called an Ionic Charge, which is a bright purple orb dropped at random by any enemy you Once you have it, just hit down on the D-pad to rain hell on the enemies. In the case of Ionic Vortex, it's a small, isolated tornado that sweeps up anything in its path. Yeah, and just like the lightning storm power from the last game, you're gonna want to make sure that no civilians get caught up in this attack if you're on a good karma playthrough. Cole and Nyx meet up with Zeke, and he has a pretty good lead from spying on the militia. He says that Bertrand has a bunch of prisoners held up at a cane plantation, and Quo might be amongst those in prison. Nyx has a plan that involves wiring a streetcar with explosives, riding it to the plantation, and having it derail and crash into the building. It's a good idea, but the innocent people inside will be burned alive. Zeke has a less lethal plan where Cole frees the cops captured by the militia, gives them guns, and then leads the charge on raiding the compound. Nyx hates this plan because she doesn't like cops, and she tries seducing Cole into going along with her. This introduces yet another aspect of karma in Infamous 2, where a story mission is split between good and evil. Once again, I have to give points to this game for expanding on the karma system. These missions play out differently, and they have different outcomes when it comes to future dialogue between Cole and his friends. You also get some decent character development from whomever was behind the mission, so Cole can either supply the cops with guns and help them raid the compound with minimal civilian casualties, or he can straight up become a simp and go along with Nyx's plan, where lots of innocent people will die.
That's all we want, girl, in this world, who understands the real me.
Since the hero route is canon, I'll only be discussing the good karma portion of these missions. Cole gets in place, and he notices that there's a ton of resistance in the area just for a cage full of cops. After taking down the militia forces surrounding the cage, Cole breaks it open and he rallies the cops together, and they all storm the plantation. Once the fighting stops, Cole unlocks a door leading to an elevator. This elevator takes him down, and it gets colder and colder as it descends. He finds Quo strung up to some device, and her body is in awful condition. It's not exactly known what Bertrand did to her, but Cole says that they, quote, filled her up with God knows what, end quote. Cole shoots the shackles holding her, and doing so unintentionally unlocks the cages of these guys in armored suits. Yeah, those dudes are gonna be a bit important later on. The two head above ground, and Zeke arrives in a pickup truck. Quo decides that she wants to get to the truck on her own, and you have to fend off a barrage of enemies pelting you with gunfire while she takes her sweet time walking. They finally make it to the truck and speed off. Fast forward to nighttime, and Quo is finally asleep. Cole says that he needs to power up a section of town called Ascension Parish. Quick little fun fact for you, Ascension Parish does exist in real life, but it's not in New Orleans, and it's further inland than its video game counterpart. Yep, it's about that time. Time to power up the city again. Except this time it's different. Infamous 1 had you navigating sewers and restoring power to an underground substation. This time, all of the areas that you're powering on are all above ground. Cole fires an electric missile in the air, and you have to navigate it to another power box. Once you hit the second power box, you have to run over to where it's at and activate it. After that, you're put into an endurance mode where multiple enemies will swarm you from every direction possible, and you have to survive until the power box explodes, takes everyone out, and restores power to the area. If you thought restoring power to the historic district was bad, imagine having to do that for an entire game. On his way to the next power box, Cole asks about how Quo is doing, and Zeke says that her skin is so cold that if he weren't watching over her, he would have thought she was dead. Zeke says that he's not too worried because watching over her made him think back to when he and Trish watched over Cole after he survived the blast. This touches a nerve with Cole, and he says that Trish saving his life is what got her killed in the first place, and the call ends. Cole gets Zeke on the phone, and he asks if Quo might have gotten powers, and Zeke says that he's unsure, and he apologizes for bringing up Trish out of nowhere. Cole says it's fine, and that he lives with his mistakes. It's clear that the ghosts of the past still haunt Cole to this very day, and they'll never leave him alone until the day he dies. I mean, anyone would be permanently scarred if they were in Cole's position during the first game. After Ascension Parish is powered back on, Zeke says that the militia kidnapped a woman from the slums and brought her to the swamp, and that Cole should go and investigate. While checking out the swamp, we hear a woman crying out for help. Before Cole can get to her, we're ambushed by those corrupted things from earlier in the game and survive the attack. Cole finds a woman hanging by her hands and he frees her. Her name is Sarah, and she says that they need to find her uncle LaRoche, who is the leader of the rebel faction fighting to get the militia out of New Marais. When the two reach him, LaRoche is pretty reluctant about Cole at first, but Cole manages to get him on his side after saying the two should join forces. And then, out of nowhere, a giant monster walking on all fours appears in the streets, and Cole rushes into the action like he always does. This thing is called the Devourer, and it's another recurring enemy in the game. It's also a recurring enemy in the script because of its name alone, and it keeps making me mess up all my takes. You can only damage it by shooting lightning or explosives in its mouth. This creature also spits out these green projectiles that looks like a head of lettuce dipped in Nickelodeon slime.
You just gotta eat the lettuce, just straight up eat the lettuce.
Occasionally, it'll grab Cole with its tongue and starts reeling him in towards its mouth. While this is going on, you have to aim and mash R1 to shoot lightning in its mouth so that you don't take a crazy amount of damage. The creature gets taken down, and LaRoche calls saying that he's still not sure about Cole, but the rebels themselves think pretty highly of him. Dude just took down a whole monster twice the size of every building on this block. What do you mean you're still not sure? Later that night, Cole finds Quo at a cemetery, and she looks a lot different than she did at the start of the game. When Quo tries to touch Cole's face, she accidentally freezes part of it, and Cole says that she needs to learn how to control her powers. She breaks down crying, and Cole tries comforting her, saying that he knows what she's going through, but Quo snaps back and says that what they went through was not the same. Cole got his powers in an explosion, and Quo got hers through slow and methodical torture. When she calms down, Cole decides that he's gonna teach her how to maintain control of her powers. You know, this is starting to sound a lot like X-Men now. I mean, think about it. People getting superpowers through a genetic defect, the government and the people creating organizations and movements to persecute those with superpowers, human experimentation, shadowy organizations. Yup, this sounds like X-Men, alright. Also, Wolverine and the X-Men is an amazing show, and it should have gotten a second season. Anyway, back to Infamous. Quo has ice powers, and whenever she's in combat with Cole, she can form an icy vapor around enemies that Cole can fire his lightning at to freeze them. Another cool thing she can do is create ice spikes under the enemy that launches them towards you so that you can finish them off. After dealing with some enemies, Quo says that one of Wolf's notes hinted that a blast core might be hidden in one of the coffins in this cemetery. The game needs you to go on a scavenger hunt for the core, and your hints are these photographs that have a picture of the general area with the grave circled. While the two are searching, Cole notices that there are body bags strewn throughout the cemetery, and Quo reveals that the plague that struck Empire City after the blast had made its way down the east coast and started inching westward toward the Gulf Coast. By the time the cast arrives in Louisiana, the plague had killed so many people that there's not enough room in the graveyards, so they started burying them outside. And you know, have they not heard of a mass grave? When they get to where the blast core is at, they're ambushed by those armored guys who escaped from the underground facility earlier. These dudes also have ice powers, and it seems that Bertrand may have transferred their powers to Quo. And we also get attacked by that Ravager, except this time it can produce these eggs from underground, and oh my god, these things look just like the toadstools from Silent Hill 4. After clearing out all the enemies, we finally get the blast core, and the two part ways, with Quo leaving in a more cheery mood. Cole goes to see what Zeke is up to, and once again he's spying on the militia from a rooftop. Zeke says that the machine Bertrand used on Quo is being transported to the area he's staking out. Then out of nowhere, he has a coughing fit, but he says he's fine.
Alright?
Yeah, fit as a fiddle.
It's a big ass fiddle.
Cole asks Zeke to watch over him again while he sleeps off the blast core. He wakes up the following morning, and this time, we don't get a new power, but an improvement to an old one. Yup, the static thrusters now allow Cole to glide a bit higher than before, once again making traveling around the city a breeze. Nyx gives us a call, and she says that there's something in the swamp that she wants to show us. When we get to the dock where Nyx is waiting, she tells us more about her past. Nyx grew up in a poor family in the swamps of New Marais. She didn't have many friends, and the only people she knew were criminals. The two of them slaughter their way through a militia outpost and steal a boat. On the way to where Nyx is taking us, Cole fends off monsters from their vessel. We arrive there, and what Nyx shows us is devastating. It's a slice of Empire City, a crater with the center still remaining unscathed. Nyx tells us that Bertrand had kidnapped a ton of people, villagers, homeless folks, and prostitutes, and Nyx's family was among the rest. She watched as her family was killed in the blast. Nyx and Bertrand were the only survivors, which means that the supposed God-fearing human purist was trying to get powers of his own. Since Bertrand survived, and he might have superpowers, there's no telling what they may be, or what he plans on using them for. Zeke gets everyone together for a meet. They're all confused on why he invited them there, and he says that the transfer device is being moved to an old outpost called Fort Philippe. Quo wants to destroy it, but Nyx objects and says that they should keep it for themselves. This leads to an argument between the two, but Cole breaks it up and says that they'll figure out what to do with it once they get their hands on it. Because of how huge Fort Philippe is, it'll take an army to raid the outpost, which means that they need to get the rebels on their side. Quo suggests earning their trust via a Hearts and Minds campaign, where they give them food, medicine, and shelter. Nyx's plan for winning over the rebels is manipulating them by disguising herself as one of the militia, going on a massacre, and then having Cole swoop in to save the day. I love this aspect of the karma system because not only is the mission split between two very different paths that reach the same goal, but it gives us a better look at the person behind the idea of each mission. Quo is a kind-hearted woman who wants to give back to the community and those living in it. She loves saving people. She carries a strong sense of justice, and she's more than willing to bring it to anyone who does wrong. Quo is by no means an angel, but she's doing the best she can to help out those who need it the most. These traits are what made Quo scared of herself after she was rescued. Quo is fearful of her own abilities because she feels like she's been outcast by the same people she wants to save because of the public's admittedly polarizing view on conduits as a whole. But after Cole teaches her how to control her powers, she feels better and slowly starts to realize that if society won't accept her, the people within her inner circle will. Nyx, on the other hand, is the opposite. She's chaotic, rebellious, and violent. The reason for this is because, well, she'd rather be an outcast than live among regular people. This is mostly due to how she grew up and how she was treated after Bertrand inadvertently gave her her powers. Nyx grew up poor in a swamp village on the outskirts of town. She had very little friends, and the only people she knew were just her family and criminals who roamed the swamps. After her family was killed by Bertrand and she woke up with her powers, she decided to use her powers to get back at the militia, Bertrand, and eventually society. She'd much rather be on the outside looking in than vice versa. That's why she grew so attached to Cole, because he's one of the few people with powers, and he understands how it feels to be ousted by everyone else for being different. Cole heads over to where Quo is waiting, and she busts through a wall with an ambulance. This is pretty much an escort mission. All you have to do is just take out enemies getting in your way, and keep the ambulance from getting destroyed. They deliver the medical supplies to a rebel hideout, but it turns out that they unintentionally led the militia to that spot. The squad of militia goons are taken care of, and LaRoche thanks Cole and Quo for increasing morale in the rebel forces. The rebels are now on board with the plan to assault Fort Philippe. Cole, LaRoche, and Quo arrive at Fort Philippe, and they discuss their plan of attack. Cole and Quo are tasked with taking out the turrets so that LaRoche's men can flood in and take out any resistance in their way. Once that's done, they'll grab the transfer device. Quo wants the device destroyed, but Nyx comes out of nowhere and suggests that they use it to swap powers. Their argument gets cut short, and they continue planning the assault. After Quo and Cole destroy the turrets, Quo will help the rebels with clearing the interior, and it'll be up to Nyx and Cole to take out enemies on the other end of the base. The onslaught begins, and the trio of conduits, along with the rebels, start raining hell on the militia. In the middle of the raid, the power gets cut, and you have to use that missile to restore power to the transformers. Once we have the power back on, Nyx and Cole continue to wreak havoc on the rooftop. Quo says that she and the rebels have found the transfer device, and they're wheeling it out for a big bonfire. The raid is over, and the three of them find themselves in front of the device, and they debate on what should happen to it. Quo wants it destroyed because of the trauma it brought her, but Nyx wants to use it to combine her powers with Cole's and vice versa. Cole says that him and Nyx will use it and then burn it down, but Quo chimes in and says that if he has to swap powers with anyone, it should be with her. So now you're presented with another choice: swap powers with Nyx or Quo. This is a big decision because you won't get the other person's powers until the post-game, so you have to choose wisely. Let's weigh our options. For Nyx, if you get her powers, you'll get abilities like Firebird Strike, Hellfire Rockets, Napalm Grenade, and an Ionic ability called Ionic Drain, which is an extreme version of Bio-Leech where Cole is able to drain energy from both people and objects in the immediate area. For Quo, you'll get Ice Launch, Shatter Blast, Ice Shield, Ice Grenade, and Ionic Freeze, an ability where Cole can launch a wave of ice at a group of enemies, freezing them on impact. Again, since the hero route is canon, Cole chooses to swap his powers with Quo.
Quo, we make a good team.
Okay, I can do this. I can do this.
I'll be right here with you.
After all we've been through together, you're gonna pick that frigid bitch over me? Screw you!
1,
I was fine before we hooked up. I'm gonna be fine after.
2,
I hope you and that bitch make each other real happy.
3.
When they set off the transfer device, both of them scream and cry in agony as the blast core drains their bodies of energy. Cole's shackles unlock, and Bertrand tries making a getaway on a chopper. When Cole sees this, he tosses a grenade that manages to hit its mark. He blacks out for a few hours, and Zeke checks up on him. It turns out Cole's grenade caused Bertrand's chopper to crash mid-flight, and now he's on the run. Oh yeah, the transfer device also never gave Quo any of our powers, and it just blew up instead.
He copied my whole fucking flow!
That gets me through the phone.
He copied my whole fucking flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
When Cole checks out the crash site, Bertrand is nowhere to be found, but he notices a disturbance in the streets and goes to investigate. Yep, it's another giant monster. This one is called the Behemoth. You know, at this point, if any more giant monsters are introduced, this would make for a pretty wicked kaiju movie. I mean, come on, Godzilla, Mothra, Destroya, and King Ghidorah throwing down with some dude that has electric powers? Count me in. To deal damage to the Behemoth, you have to shoot its glowing purple weak spots whenever they show up. The Behemoth will occasionally grab you and try to reel you in, so you have to shoot at it with lightning until it lets go. The Behemoth is taken down, but through the fog, Cole makes out a very familiar figure, Joseph Bertrand. That's right, Bertrand is the Behemoth. With this, Cole now has leverage over Bertrand. He doesn't know how he's gonna do it yet, but Cole's gonna expose him for the fraud he is. Bertrand flees to New Murray's second island. This island contains two main sections, Floodtown and the Gasworks. As I mentioned at the start of the video, Floodtown was a section of New Murray that was long abandoned after being devastated by Hurricane Katrina. The people remaining there consist of civilians struggling to survive with what little they have, the militia, and those ice soldiers. The Gasworks is one big industrial park filled to the brim with factories and warehouses. This area is a huge playground for parkour, with the smokestack standing high above the island. As Cole works to restore power to Floodtown, Ravager calls and tells us stories about the flood and how bad it was for him and everyone else, and that he lost his wife during the storm. The bridge is powered back on, and as we cross it, we're attacked by those ice soldiers. These guys are actually mercenaries from South Africa in a group called Vermont 88. Ever since they broke out of that underground facility, they've been attacking people indiscriminately. Let me just say that fighting these guys is no joke. They can launch themselves into the air with that ice launch power, create riot shields, and they're just an all-around hassle to fight if you're not prepared, especially if you're trying to protect the power transformer. After Cole powers up Flood Town, Zeke hits us up and says that Ravager set up a med station and that he might have found a cure for the plague. When we get to where Zeke and Ravager are at, Ravager reveals that his cure isn't really a cure, but just a way to ease the victim's pain before they succumb to the illness. The reason they need Cole there is so that he can protect the villagers coming in from the swamps from being harmed by the monsters. A siren goes off and Cole heads to its location. Zeke tells us that the spotlight he mounted utilizes UV rays that can burn the corrupted to a crisp. He calls it the Dunbar beam. Yeah, I don't even know. Another siren goes off and we head there to deal with more monsters. Can I just say that there's something satisfying about seeing the health bars of boss monsters get drained?
Oh man, Zeke, this spotlight kicks ass.
Yeah, you mean the Dunbar beam?
I'm not going to call it that.
All three of the alarms sound off, and Ravager decides that Cole should fall back to camp so that they can come up with another plan. When Cole gets back to camp, the place is already under attack, and strangely enough, Vermont are attacking the monsters instead of us, so we decide to help them thin the enemy's numbers. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The monsters are cleared out, and Ravager thanks the ice soldiers for their assistance. Turns out, Vermont were after a blast core Ravager was hiding, and Zeke just makes things a whole lot worse.
What? Y'all got a blast core?
I was gonna tell you.
Man, we'd sooner die and give it to you freaks!
We accept your terms.
Thanks, nice choice of words, Zeke.
We're locked into a fight with another variant of the ice soldiers called the Ice Heavy. Rather than use guns, they use their powers instead. They can create these pillars of ice which gives them the advantage of higher ground. Another ability they have is the Ice Beam, which if it lands, you'll be taking a lot of damage. Once the Heavy is finished, Ravager says that the blast core is ours after we do one more favor for him. Vermont set fire to these wells that are spread throughout Flood Town, and Ravager needs us to suffocate the flames since the smoke is making it hard to breathe for everyone living there. In order to do this, you gotta lift the well caps using that Kinetic Pulse ability we got earlier in the game. You know, that ability I barely even used. On the way to the final cap, we get a glimpse at Bertrand turning another dude into a corrupted. Seems like his only power isn't just turning into a giant monster, but making others into monsters as well. We make it to the final cap and get into a fight with another ice conduit, and we kick his ass. Ravager calls and says that he's sorry for doubting Cole, and that he should pay Zeke a visit because he has the blast core, and he also has some news.
Whoa. Password for the clubhouse?
Yeah, don't shoot my ass.
Don't shoot my ass.
Entrez-vous.
Zeke set up a little hideout in the rail yard, and when we get inside, Quo tells us that Wolf's notes said that the RFI was originally created to cure the plague. The plague is caused by radiation poisoning, more specifically, ray field radiation. Cole laments about how he caused the plague in Empire City and absorbs the blast core. When he wakes up, he attempts to fire up the RFI, but it doesn't work. Cole needs at least a couple more to activate it. The Megawatt Hammer makes a return, and let me just say that this is such a relief. It'll be way easier to take on corrupted enemies like the Ravager, since the hammer deals more damage than the grenade. Cole returns to the rail yard, and this time Nix is here. Quo discovered that Bertrand makes regular visits to the yards to do his dirty work, but they're completely random and hard to pin down. Nix says that she knows why, but Quo keeps shutting her down. Cole gives Nix the floor, and she says that Bertrand is able to bond with and train the corrupted to listen to and protect him. She knows this because she actually had one of her own, and it died protecting her from a militia ambush. Quo suggests that she and Cole go and collect evidence and use it to turn the entire city against Bertrand. But Nix has a different plan, and she says that they should find a herd of corrupted and allow them to bond with her so that she can raise an entire army and use them against the militia. Honestly, as much as I love Nix as a character, I think that Quo's idea is way better. I mean, think about it. Having the people find out what kind of person Bertrand really is could decrease morale for him and his army. Nix's plan isn't really the most practical. Sure, it'd be nice to have an army of corrupted under your command, but that doesn't compare to exposing someone like Bertrand for the fraud he is. When we get to Quo's meeting spot, she says that she's still trying to mess around with the TV antenna, and Cole should go without her. While he's trying to get there, Quo says that Cole needs to pick up the pace because she drugged the guards and they might wake up soon. What's funny about this is that you can stand idly by for as long as you want and the game won't penalize you. Kinda wish there was a timer since that would make you hurry the hell up. The first picture we take is of the civilians that are imprisoned in a boxcar. Quo reminds us that we should be careful about how we use our powers since they'll attract attention. Yep, we're on a stealth mission this time.
You can't let anyone see you. You can't let the enemy know you're there. This is a stealth mission.
No problem. A few minutes later.
We get more pictures of the corrupted and the prisoners, and Quo says that she just got word that Bertrand entered a warehouse and we can catch him in the act. Cole gets a clear view from a conveniently placed skylight of Bertrand turning a normal guy into one of those corrupted. The photo is snapped, and Quo broadcasts all the pictures across television networks in New Marais. The city gets to see Bertrand for what he really is, a hypocrite. A man claiming to be a human purist when he himself is one of those freaks that he persecutes. Bertrand's true colors have finally been revealed.
That's stupid, guys. Is this camera on me?
Yes, it's on.
That's stupid. Use your common sense.
Bertrand spots Cole in the skylight and he dips, and the rebels start raiding the rail yard. While Cole is freeing the prisoners, Nyx shows up out of nowhere with her army of corrupted and tells Cole that her plan was better. Cole condemns her for taking monsters that used to be people and using them for her own purposes. The yard gets cleared and the prisoners are freed. Later on, Cole meets up with Zeke at a garage and he's riding a semi-truck. He tells Cole that what he's carrying is a surprise, and Cole blasts off the cover, revealing a nuke. That's right. Zeke stole a whole-ass nuclear missile from the militia, and he's gonna use it on the Beast. The reason Bertrand has this thing in his possession in the first place was because he asked Wolf to put it together just in case one of his experiments went wrong. And I mean very wrong. We need to escort the nuke across town and make sure the militia don't destroy it. Zeke also echoes what the player is thinking during this mission too.
Man, if you know what it is, then stop shooting at it!
On the horizon, we can see the Beast wreaking havoc on a nearby town. We have to put a stop to this. They make it to the harbor and position the nuke. Cole climbs a crane and readies the targeting system, but before he can paint the laser over its target, Vermont soldiers ambush him out of nowhere, and we gotta clear the area before we can launch the nuke at the Beast. The ice soldiers are dealt with, and Cole is finally able to use the targeting system. Once the nuke is launched, it hits the Beast hard and knocks Cole off his feet. The air is littered with smoke, and the sky's now orange. While we're rescuing Zeke, an orange ball of energy forms, and they realize that the Beast managed to survive a nuke. That orange mass of energy is also about to explode, so they hop on the semi and haul ass before it does. Following the explosion, Zeke crashes the truck and Cole gets knocked out. Gotta say that Cole does not have the best of luck when it comes to semi-trucks in this game. When asked about where he ran off to, Zeke says that he went back to the gasworks to chase the Beast, but he disappeared. It's time to power up one last district in the game, the gasworks. Instead of fighting the militia for the power transformers, this time we're fighting off the Vermont. Vermont began controlling the gasworks once they got ran out of Floodtown, and they've been terrorizing the people here ever since. Surprisingly, Bertrand still goes there to do his dirty work. Zeke gives an update about the nuke, and he says that there haven't been any reports of fallout, which means they can rest knowing that they launched a nuclear missile without giving civilians radiation poisoning. When we make it to the next transformer, Bertrand traps us in a room and says that his authority's been slipping away ever since Cole arrived. Bertrand tries convincing Cole to work with him in stopping the Beast, but Cole gets wise and shuts down his offer. He knows that Bertrand would betray him the first chance he got.
Listen to me, Bertrand. You want me to save your city? You want me to kill the Beast? Get me out of here and stay the hell out of my way.
I wish I had the same faith in your abilities. But if you're not with me, well, you're against me.
Bertrand doesn't like this, and he orders his men to open fire on Cole. There's no way out of this. You have to try and take as little damage as possible until help arrives. Zeke comes to the rescue, and he takes out the two militia outside the cage and unlocks the doors. It's at this moment that Cole finally forgives Zeke.
Yeah. Hey, Zeke. I've been treating you like shit. I'm sorry, man.
I screwed you over pretty hard back in Empire. I get it, man.
No. You've always got my back. Thank you.
Look,
I don't call you brother because I like the way it sounds. I should get out of here. Militia's gonna be here soon.
Well, that's a really touching scene. After Zeke nearly activated the Ray Sphere again and betrayed Cole by flying off with Kessler, I don't think anyone could find it in themselves to forgive him. This scene hits harder if you read the comics that took place between the first and second games. At one point in the first issue, Cole explodes in anger at Zeke and says that every time he sees his face, he sees Kessler laughing at him for failing to save Trish. And in that same conversation, Cole even says that he wants to strangle Zeke, but the only thing keeping him from doing that is because he's all he has left. Thankfully, they managed to repair their friendship, and it's all water under the bridge now. Once the two part ways, Zeke calls and says that someone he knows in the militia thinks that Bertrand is hiding a blast core in one of his warehouses. We have to pretty much take a guess at which crate is the one the blast core is in. Near one of the warehouses, we get into a fight with an ice titan, which is a giant, humanoid, hulking mass of ice that can hurl large chunks of the stuff at Cole for a lot of damage. He puts up a pretty decent fight, but he's no match for me spamming Megawatt Hammer. In the safe is not only a blast core, but also a briefcase. The briefcase contains invoices for conduit super soldiers to be sent to warlords across the world so that they can use them in their armies. That's right, Bertrand could kick off an entire world war using conduits. Cole starts wondering about Bertrand's endgame. The guy has more than enough money, so why is he trafficking super soldiers? What's his real goal? Regardless, Bertrand has to be stopped. With the blast core in Cole's possession, he heads back to Zeke's rooftop, and the next cutscene needs no commentary.
I love that part.
With this blast core, we get Lightning Tether, which allows Cole to throw an arc of lightning at a wall or a building, and lets him zip forward. This was one of those powers that was really cool to use at first, but something I forgot I even had by the end of the game. I prefer using the static thrusters. The following day, Zeke says that Bertrand is loading something major onto one of his cargo ships, and it might be those conduit super soldiers he's selling. Cole decides that the best way to draw Bertrand out of hiding would be to sabotage the boats. Also, Zeke jokes that Bertrand would probably get so pissed that he'd transform and fight it out with the beast. Again, Infamous 2 would make a really awesome kaiju movie. Once all the boats are disabled, we get a visit from someone unexpected. John White. That's right, he's alive. John says that he can still feel the moment leading up to his death, and that he had to pull himself back together to come back to life. John places 2 fingers on Cole's head, giving him a new power. Cole is now able to see the plague in the bodies of other people, and John can communicate with him telepathically. We're told to meet with John at a plague ward. When we arrive, lots of sick people are in bed or on the ground dying a slow and painful death. We're told to search for a conduit in the ward, and when we find her, John tells Cole to try his healing powers. Nothing. John says that he can save her and other conduits, but at a great cost. He uses his power. John transforms into the beast and destroys the plague ward, killing everyone there. When Cole awakens, the woman he tried healing earlier approaches, thanks him, and then flies away. That's right, John is a walking Ray Sphere, and his goal is to activate as many potential conduits as possible. The reason he's doing this is because he thinks that he's ending the suffering of anyone that has the plague, and he's opening the door for a new breed of humans. These people are just a means to an end for John. I have a grasp on John's way of thinking, but I don't like it. I understand that the plague at this point in time is incurable, and anyone who has it is gonna die. But for as many people that have the plague, there are most likely just as many people who aren't even sick from it and don't even carry the conduit gene. John is doing no one any favors. Does he even know if every conduit he saves is happy? What if they had family and friends they were close with? What he's doing is just genocide. Nobody has the right to decide when someone should die. John needs to be stopped before he destroys New Marais and ends up killing more and more people across the country. All we just need is the power from one final blast core to use the RFI. It's time to put an end to this madness. After witnessing the devastation caused by John's power, Cole gets word from Zeke that Bertrand is trying to flee the city by chopper, but Zeke managed to sabotage his ride. The plan is to bait Bertrand into transforming into that monster so that the rebels can shine him with those UV lights and slow him down while Cole takes him on. Cole finally confronts Bertrand on the landing pad, and he starts questioning his motives. Bertrand confesses that he wants everyone on Earth to fear conduits, and that conduits, even himself, are an abomination, and that he's doing God's work by having them purged.
See, that's where you're wrong, Bertrand. Conduits aren't monsters. No. See, powers don't kill people. Oh no. It's the person behind the powers that kill people.
That's right.
For this first stage of the fight, Zeke is going to be driving you away from the Behemoth, and you gotta do whatever you can to slow him down and make sure the truck doesn't take too much damage. Zeke finally makes it to the lure spot, and the rebels shine the Behemoth with UV lights, leaving him stunned. Once the monster gains its bearings, it's time to take him on for real. This time with Nyx or Quo at your side, depending on your karma, of course. Not that either of them will have a huge impact on the fight, but hey, it's nice to have someone help out. After some fighting, Ravager arrives on a helicopter and picks up Cole. You're pretty much doing the same thing you did on the truck, except now you're in the air. Ravager's idea is to lure Bertrand into a perfect spot so that he and his men can get better aim at him with these specially made missiles. The missiles don't really do much outside of pissing him off even more. The Behemoth continues its pursuit, and Ravager says that he has propane tanks all over one of the ambush spots. When the tanks explode, they actually slow him down. You mean to tell me that Bertrand has all this money from his superhuman arms race and commissioned a nuke, yet he can't even afford decent missiles? Cole touches down for one last confrontation with Bertrand, and after a long battle, Cole emerges victorious. Joseph Bertrand III's reign has finally come to an end. All that's left now is the beast. Later on, Zeke gives us a call and says that he found out that the final blast core is being held by the Vermont at a refinery. They meet at a nearby dock to discuss their plan, but Zeke has a brutal coughing fit, and Cole uses his new power and finds out that Zeke has the plague, and he doesn't have much time left. The blast core is encased in ice at the top of the refinery, and Cole needs to melt the ice by turning on several heat valves planted on the outside. John contacts Cole telepathically and says that he could use Cole's help since they're friends, but Cole shoots this offer down, reminding John of the destruction he caused in Empire City. You ever have a friend ask you if you want to help them commit genocide? John reveals that the reason he went on a rampage in Empire is because when he was reborn from the core of the Ray Sphere, he didn't have control over himself. He could only react to whatever he perceived as a threat. And that threat was Cole. He says that he wishes there was another way to keep conduits alive and tells Cole to think about it. As we're climbing the ice tower, Zeke buzzes in and breaks some bad news. The swamp village outside of Flood Town was destroyed by the Beast and there were no survivors. The Beast also killed Nyx's army of monsters that she raised. We turn the valve and melt the ice, keeping the core trapped, but you'd be foolish for thinking the Vermont were just gonna hand something like that over. The ice soldiers make one final stand. If they're gonna go down, they're gonna die protecting that blast core at all costs. Despite all their efforts, Cole manages to take all of them out and seize the blast core. Cole brings the core back to Zeke's place, and the two have a short chat about initiative and getting things done. Afterwards, Cole powers the core one last time and falls asleep. The final power received from the blast core is Ionic Storm, which is basically Lightning Storm from the last game. And guess what? This time you don't need to tilt the 6-axis to control the lightning. This power needs no explanation. Just hold down on the D-pad and unleash hell on a group of enemies. Just be careful that there aren't any civilians around if you're playing as a hero. Cole gets done testing his new power, and Zeke tells him to come back to the rooftop so that he can fire up the RFI. It's finally time to put an end to this. When Cole arrives, the tension in the air is thick. Cole breaks the news to everyone that John is the Beast, and that he's using his powers like a ray sphere to activate and cure potential conduits while killing anyone without the gene. Everyone's surprised, and Nyx demands Cole to fix the situation now. Cole picks up the RFI and tries activating it, only for him, Quo, and Nyx to be put under an immense amount of pain. Zeke thankfully steps in and hits the device with Cole's amp. Turns out that the RFI wasn't even fully charged in the first place, and that's when Cole realizes that if he fires it off, every single conduit in existence, even himself, will die. He says that John's method works, and that his method will be the only way that conduits survive. Nyx steps up and says that she doesn't care what happens to her, and she just wants the beast dead. Quo says that what John's doing isn't pretty, but it's necessary, and that he needs to activate as many conduits as possible. We're then presented with the biggest decision in not just the game, but the series as a whole. Activate the RFI to cure the plague and save humanity at the cost of your own life, or side with Quo and the Beast and go along with their plan to activate more conduits, killing millions more people. Now in the last video, I didn't really touch on evil karma because 1, that route isn't even canon, and 2, both routes have really basic endings. The good ending of Infamous 1 has Cole doing the typical superhero speech about how he's responsible for the people in the city and whatnot, and the evil ending just has Cole monologuing like an edgelord. For this video, I'm gonna talk about what happens in the evil ending first, since both endings have more substance to them. If you want to skip to me talking about the good, or in this case canon ending, skip to the timestamp shown on the screen. Now let's see what happens in the evil ending. Cole turns around and tells Quo that they should find John. Nyx gets upset and snatches the RFI, teleporting away from the rooftop with Quo in pursuit. Zeke, understandably furious, says that the next time Cole sees him, he had better shoot first, and he walks away. Hours later, Cole and Quo meet with John at a dockyard. While the three are discussing their plan, the power gets cut and Quo goes to look for Zeke. John transforms into the Beast, and his presence amplifies Cole's powers in the absence of electricity. Their plan is to head to the cathedral downtown and trigger a series of explosions there because that place is more dense and will allow for more potential conduits to be activated. On their way to the cathedral, Cole and the Beast are met with resistance from both the rebels and the militia, but the two massacre anyone and everyone standing in their path. Midway through, Nyx swoops in with the RFI and says that she'll hurt Cole if she has to, and fires off a beam from the device, which incapacitates the Beast. Cole goes to confront Nyx, and the two are locked in battle. In this fight, Nyx can hit you with the RFI beam, which deals a lot of damage, so you do not want to get hit by this thing. Cole overpowers Nyx, and she retreats. They continue their rampage through the streets, and they eventually cross the river and touch down on the first island. While this is happening, Quo buzzes in and says that she got the power back on, and Cole asks if Zeke was harmed. She gives a somewhat cryptic answer, saying that she only did what she had to. John reassures Cole and tells him to not lose focus, and that as awful as this may be, this is something that has to be done. Yeah, Cole, you can't really act surprised when you decided to take part in a plan like this. When they make it to the center of the red light district, Nyx knocks down the Beast again with the RFI. Cole leaves the Beast behind and climbs the building Nyx is on, and they fight it out for round 2. Nyx gets defeated once again, and she retreats to another section of town. John recovers, and they continue their march. Nyx fires the RFI at the Beast for the 3rd time from the cathedral. Cole runs to where she's at, and the two clash yet again for one final duel. Nyx puts up a pretty good fight throughout this level. She constantly teleports, creates explosions with her napalm, and she keeps the player guessing with her randomly using the RFI on you. Cole manages to overpower Nyx, and he uses the amp to pin her neck to the ground and electrocute her to death. The RFI rolls towards Zeke, and he picks it up. This scene is it's just so hard to watch.
Half as long.
Twice as bright. I gotta try.
I know.
The music, Zeke hesitating to fire his gun, seeing him struggle to get up after each blast. It's so gut-wrenching to see Zeke get murdered by Cole of all people. Zeke stuck by Cole's side even after the events of the first game, and seeing their friendship end with one of them getting murdered in cold blood is really dark. Cole grabs the RFI and smashes it into pieces, squandering humanity's only shot at a second chance. Once it's destroyed, John says that he's tired of all the killing he's done, but he still believes in his plan for conduits. Then, John gives Cole his powers, and he sets off an explosion that destroys New Marais. Through the destruction, new conduits had risen from the ashes, and Cole and Quo spent time training them. Millions more had the plague, so Cole and his new team of conduits marched from city to city, wreaking havoc and activating more potential conduits. The military got involved and tried to stop them, but how do you think that ended? Cole was given powers to save the world, but instead he's using them to change it for the wrong reasons. Cole MacGrath has become the Beast. Well, that was a pretty dark ending. Cole and his friends destroying an entire city and then killing millions more across the country because they don't have a specific gene? Good lord, that's immoral. This ending does do a good job at driving home my point about how it's unfair that the Beast is killing so many innocent people just so that one person with superpowers survives the plague. As I pointed out earlier, John doesn't know whether or not these conduits are happy, especially when you take into account their family and friends that he just murdered. Not to mention that they're pretty much homeless with nowhere to go. Superpowers or not, how could John or Cole expect anybody to move on, or even put their trust in them after they destroyed everything and everyone that person cared about? Seeing Quo switch up at the last minute really caught me by surprise. This entire game she's been this angelic humanitarian, and then out of nowhere she teams up with her former NSA partner to help them commit genocide. And Cole is just, oh man. Next to intentionally detonating the ray sphere at the near end of the last game and murdering his best friend in cold blood, this has to be the most diabolical thing Cole can do in his evil routes. Now that that's out of the way, let's get back to the canon side of things and talk about what really happened. Cole turns around and asks if the RFI can be fixed. Zeke says that it's possible, and then out of nowhere, Quo tries to snatch the RFI out of his hands to no avail. Quo yells at the group, saying that they're all going to regret this, and she teleports away. Quo is going to be a huge problem later on. The three take a closer look at the RFI, and in order to fix it, they have to juice it up with as much power as possible. They head to the cathedral and hook the device up to a charging panel. The plan here is to charge the RFI at different substations across the city. Cole and Zeke say goodbye to each other one final time before parting ways to execute the plan.
Oh, this plan sucks.
I know. Short notice, man.
Alright. As soon as the RFI's ready, I'm gonna flip the switch. It's not gonna be time for goodbyes.
Cole hops onto LaRoche's boat, and they make way to the first substation. Sadly, they arrive too late. The Beast made it to the substation before they could, and he destroys it. That's when Cole begins to realize that the Beast is following the RFI, and now he's marching towards the boats. Cole orders LaRoche to get his fleet to turn around, but it's too late. They're in too deep, and there's no turning back. LaRoche refuses, and instead he tells Cole to leave his fleet behind and get back to shore so that him and his men can buy time for Cole and Nyx. They make it back to the streets and activate the first substation. Nyx is gonna stand guard and defend the RFI, while Cole goes head to head with the Beast. The Beast goes on the offensive and uses a lot of his powers that we saw at the start of the game, turning off gravity in the immediate area, explosive attacks, and creating a vortex that pulls in Cole and other people and takes away over half your health. Cole manages to incapacitate the Beast, and Quo swoops in and fights Cole one-on-one. Quo is a complete pushover in this fight. All of her abilities that she uses against you were copy-pasted from the Ice Heavy. This really sucks because Nyx gave us a decent boss fight in the evil ending, and she even had her own set of moves. You'd think that Quo would give us somewhat of a challenge, but I'm gonna be fair and chalk it up to her being new to her powers. After all, Nyx has had her powers longer than Quo. Quo retreats, and the Beast recovers for another duel against Cole. The Beast takes yet another beating, and Cole uses Ionic Storm on him for good measure, but that wasn't enough. Nyx performs a suicide charge and rams headfirst into the Beast at full power, sacrificing herself to buy Cole some time. Cole heads to the cathedral and gives the RFI one last charge. Once it's charged up, Cole is about to set it off, but he notices that the Beast has gotten back up, so he heads back to the streets for one final showdown. Cole finally brings the Beast down, and just as he's about to activate the RFI, Quo approaches him sobbing, and she admits that she was wrong about John's plan, and it's just that she's scared of dying. Cole activates the RFI, and then...
We all just held our breath and watched. As one by one, them monsters started to drop. Yeah, that RFI worked all right. News said even some folks overseas were keeling over. Poor bastards must have been conduits and didn't even know it. But it was worth it. 'Cause for the thousands that died, millions were gonna live. The plague, man, it was just gone. I could already hear people starting to party, just celebrating being alive. I thought my friend was gonna go down as an unsung hero. But here in New Marais, they knew what he had done for them. Who'd have guessed that the demon of Empire City would become the patron saint of New Marais? I wanted to say goodbye to him alone. He had been my best friend, and now he was gone. Sometimes I hear folks talking about conduits and humans like they're totally different. That's bullshit. Because there ain't nobody with more humanity than Cole MacGrath. I love you, brother. And I'm sure gonna miss you.
That's it. That's the end. Cole sacrificed himself and many others to cure the plague and make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. I got Infamous 2 as a Christmas gift in 2011 when I was 12 years old. A few months later I'd finished the story, and this was the first game in my life that actually made me shed tears. What made the ending so great was just how it showed people celebrating being alive and showing their gratitude towards Cole for what he did. In the first game, Cole was an ordinary man given superpowers through a freak accident, but he wants to leave his city behind for his sake. One game later, and he's actively working to save not only the people he cares about, but his community, and later on, the rest of humanity. If you pay close attention to some of the cutscenes in the final mission, you can hear the sound of reluctance and regret in his voice because he knows what's coming but doesn't want to face it. Infamous 1 was a game about social responsibility and adapting to a fast-changing environment. In that game, Cole was a man who didn't want anything to do with any conspiracy that whatever three-letter agency was up to. At the end of the first game, Cole learns that he can't just run away from his problems forever, and that these people are his responsibility. Infamous 2 is about pushing yourself as much as you can against seemingly impossible odds no matter the cost. There are points where Cole doubts himself, and he even considers giving up in his quest to stop the beast, but later on he remembers what's at stake. A huge slice of the country is dying from an incurable illness, and cities are being completely decimated by the beast. The only person who can put an end to this madness is him. If Cole left everything behind, the beast and the plague would have ended up killing millions more people. In the end, Cole accepts his fate and sacrifices himself for the greater good. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. A lot of hard work went into this project, and it was made even more difficult with my family and I moving in the middle of production, which explains why you can hear some echoes in some of the recordings. Originally, I wanted to get this video out by the end of June so that it could be released alongside the 10th anniversary of this game. Unfortunately, because of life getting in the way of stuff, that was not possible. My plan now is to cover Infamous Second Son and First Light in the same video. I don't really have a projected release date for that video, especially with life getting in the way of all my plans for the other videos that I've written scripts for, but when I get close to finishing it, I'll let you guys know. If you want to keep up with my projects, make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Now, normally I'd plug my Discord server at the end of the video, but my account's been hacked and it's been disabled by Discord for spam, so we don't know what's gonna happen with the server. So in the meantime, I'm gonna try to make a new one. Thank you guys for watching my video, and I appreciate the support. I'll see you guys next time.